My name is Jason Nash, and I'm a Senior Solutions Architect with Vero. In this video, we're going to demonstrate the configuration and testing of the new fault tolerance feature in VMware's vSphere. Fault tolerance, or FT, kind of takes that HA functionality we've had in VI3 and still in VI4 and really extends that and gives you even better recoverability. So with HA, you would have some virtual machines running on an ESX server, and if that server were to fail, the cluster would restart those VMs on another system that had availability and capacity. It kept you from having an outage, but you still had to wait for the OS and the apps to come up, which could be 60 seconds, 90 seconds, possibly longer. If you have an Exchange server with a large database, it could be even longer than that. So FT takes that and really even reduces that much further. So FT will have a secondary VM set up also in the cluster. Anything that happens on the primary gets logged and shipped over to the secondary VM. The secondary VM doesn't actually process anything. It just kind of replays those logs as they come across. So, and this isn't just disk, but this is everything. So if an application is processing requests for clients, anytime it's doing anything, that gets shipped to the secondary VM. And we'll see that with a pretty good demo here in a second. So taking a look in the lab here, we've got a simple cluster, 2 ESX servers, 31 and 32, some virtual machines, but only one powered up. His IP address is .110. And so to get started doing FT is very simple. And really the only thing you have to enable first is you have to check and make sure that you have HA enabled. Again, it extends the HA functionality, so make sure that's turned on. DRS is kind of an up to you. You'll find that when you enable FT on a virtual machine, that specific virtual machine gets put into manual mode for DRS. So you can still run it on the rest of your cluster, but for those specific machines, they get taken out of that automation of DRS. And that has a lot to do with, because they have a secondary machine, you have to, VMware goes through great pains to make sure that that secondary machine doesn't end up on the same ESX server as a primary machine, therefore defeating the purpose. So everything looks good there. And assuming everything else in the cluster is working as it should, which it should, you're ready to go. So take a look at this VM, VM1, right click, fault tolerance, turn on fault tolerance. Say yes. And it's going to start building that secondary system. You'll see it flash up in the inventory and then go away. I'll show you where you can go actually look at that machine here in a minute. One other thing to keep in mind is do a test vMotion within your cluster first, because when it's building that secondary machine, it actually uses vMotion to get it ready. It does that initial memory copy and everything just to stage it and have it going. You'll also notice when we started this, you now have a fault tolerance box here on the bottom right. This will be a useful little box. It shows your protection status. Any problems, right now it says need secondary VM because we're still building the secondary VM here. It'll tell you the location. Since our host here is running on .31 and the only other ESX server we have is .32, he's going to end up being put on .32. It shows you the CPU and memory in use by the secondary, and there it goes. It's now up and running. Right now it's 0:0. It'll take a second and you'll start seeing it's actually using some. But most interesting is you can actually see the VM lag time, how far behind the primary it is. It's going to be very close, but there's still a bit there. And the logging bandwidth. So that's one question people always ask me when I talk about FT is, how much bandwidth do I use shipping this stuff back across the network? And you'll find that it's not a great amount, but you want to keep that in mind and you want to architect this correctly. So right now it's about 18 kilobit and 9,000th of a second behind, so that's not too bad. So let's take a look at a couple things here. If you want to see the console for this machine, he's on 32, so we go look at 32 and VMs, and you'll see there's the secondary. Show you something that's very interesting, kind of proves the point of how this works. Open his console. You'll see here it says it's read-only. Got YouTube open on the primary, so we'll go back to the primary and open his console. Let's go to one of our videos. In case you didn't know, we have a Vero channel on YouTube, www.youtube.com/VeroInc. And this is one for a customer of ours. It's playing the video, though poorly, over the remote desktop protocol and over YouTube. But if you look on the secondary, it's doing the same thing. The secondary is not actually pulling this video feed down. It's just that the primary is actually processing this video, doing everything, bringing it over the network, and then it's logging this and shipping it across. So if we go take a look back here at Virtual Center, you'll see, we're 5 thousandths of a second behind, and we're using a little bit more bandwidth. We're not using an extreme amount of bandwidth, but we're using more. Using a little bit more CPU, using some more memory. 40 meg, not a great deal, but it's still using some. So we'll go back to the primary and hit stop. Close that. If you look on the secondary, it does the same thing. Pretty neat, huh? So, to prove our point, we go back to the console here. I'm running a ping against that machine, 10.13.7.110, 10.13.7.110, and I've got an ILO connection here to the ESX server of .31. So we'll go in, and now we want to see what happens when he fails over. So we'll reset the power, we'll say OK, jump here quickly, and take a look. Normally, you might lose one ping. So there's one ping down, and he's right back. Go take a look here at the console again. Right click, open my console. Right there he is. The machine's functioning, it's up, it's fine. Here in just a second, you'll see the other servers go down and blank out to prove that I actually did power down the right system. So I think you'll find that FT is going to be a very big feature. We've got a lot of people who are still a little hesitant on virtualizing Tier 1 apps. Now, if anybody's used things like Microsoft Clustering Service, and not to pick on them, but the other clustering tools, I know I used to use the Legato stuff. It's a hassle. It's still, if the primary fails, you still restart the apps on the other side. So there's a lot of configuration there, and a lot of issues there, and upgrades and patches are much harder. With FT, you're running one system. You don't have the problems with upgrades and patches. You don't have the time, even just the simple time it takes to restart apps. Everything just pops up and goes. And there you can see the machine is resetting. And you'll notice he's now on 32. We went to not protected status because we've lost our secondary. If we had more than one ESX server, or more than two ESX servers in the lab, probably work a little better as far as recovering. But I think you'll find that FT, convinces a lot of people. There's a few limitations. You can check the knowledge base on VMware for some of the limitations as far as CPU and memory and what you can do with this. They're also recommending, I believe it's no more than 8 protected machines per ESX box. And if you think about it, 8 protected machines on one server is a lot. It's not something I see a lot of people doing, that many. I think you'll see that this is used for a lot of your, or not a lot, but used for your Tier 1 type apps. And HA is still used for everything else. But that's our walkthrough of FT, and the demo's over. Thank you.